Hello, ladies
Hello
and gentlemen.
and welcome.
Steve.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this. You just sit tight, get back in your box, and you just leave this up to me, mate.
You know how hard that is. All right.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper Podcast. This is episode number 100. No, I am not your host, Steve Smith. My name is Nico Douglas, and I'm the course superintendent at Cranbourne Golf Club in Melbourne. Before you get too worried, Steve is fine. I haven't locked him in a basement somewhere, and I haven't taken over his podcasts. Me and Steve have been cooking up this idea for a while now with this milestone episode, and we thought, what better way to create episode number 100 than to interview the great man himself for the Keeper of the Greens segment sponsored by John Deere Golf. So without further ado, please let me introduce Steve Smith, golfer, greenkeeper, father, and host of the Golfing Greenkeeper Podcast. How are you, Steve?
From the body of the same name. I'm good, Nico. How are you, mate?
I'm well, thanks, Steve. Just enjoying sunny and rainy Melbourne.
Mate, this is, I'm not sure. I'm a bit weirded out. But if you know what? Well, firstly, I have to thank John Deere Golf, who are sponsors of this episode of Keeper of the Greens. And now I'm one of those people that I've interviewed, and I'm being interviewed by yourself, mate. And I have to, obviously, we have to mention John Deere Golf. So if you're looking after sports turf, then make sure you check out deere.com.au and go and find out your nearest reps there to see what John Deere Golf can do to help you out. Now, I've got to make sure that we get that part of it done, mate. And look, now, I say I'm weirded out. I'm looking forward to this. And we have been talking about it. I've had a lot of people suggesting to me to do something special for 100. So it means that I'm relinquishing control in a sense. And if I'm going to do it, I think I need to be ready. So, all right. I need to crack open a can, mate, because I've got to sit back and enjoy this one from the other side.
Well, that's fair enough. I'm on the waters, so between the two of us, hopefully we can get something half decent.
Let's give this one a crack and have a hell of a time doing it so everyone can have a laugh with us.
Absolutely, mate. I'm very excited to be doing this. So you should be pretty familiar with the format of this podcast by now, Steve. But before we get into anything too in-depth, I've thrown a slight spanner in the works. Instead of Steve's Super 7, today you will be doing Nico's Naughty 9. So a little bit different.
Nico's Naughty 9. I hope we're not going somewhere untoward here. This is PG, and I do have a sponsor in John Deere Golf, mate. Come on.
No, we'll keep it PG, I think. But just something a little bit different for you, keep you on your toes.
I like it.
Steve, are you ready?
I am. I've got my eyes are watering. I'm not sure what to do here, but I think I'm ready, mate. So let's give it a crack.
Fantastic. All right, Steve. Question number 1: sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise all day, every day, and I don't really care what other people think is the right answer. Sunrise. I grew up. I've become a morning person from when I was a kid. And that goes to a lot of our travelling holidays, mate. I've seen some wonderful parts of this country. And sunrise sunset's a great way to finish the day. But sunrise, and on a golf course, and I know I'm rambling already, and we just got started. How many minutes are we? On a golf course, my feeling's always been, as a super, and supers out there, I'm sure understand what I'm going to say here when I say it, but You're usually the first person there. You're always the first person there in the mornings, and it's usually sometimes dark, depending on daylight savings and depending on which state you're in. But it's the earliest time of the day at dawn, and the world around you is waking up. And what I really miss, and what I used to love, was opening up the shed doors in the morning, and it was silent, but as that dawn break was happening, you'd start to hear the wildlife. You'd start to hear the birds going out there and getting ready to get breakfast for their babies in the nest, or just waking up, and all the sounds would start to filter in layer by layer. And that's why I love the sunrise, man. I just don't think you can beat it. And then the colours, it's amazing.
Mate, I could not agree with you any more then, but I have to give you a taste of your own medicine. These are meant to be quick-fire questions, and you've just spent 2 minutes answering question number 1.
Righto. I knew this was going to happen.
No. Just joking, mate. You spend as long as you want.
All good. We don't want to bore people, so let's keep moving.
No, I don't think they'll be bored, Steve. All right, question number 2. Dogs or no dogs allowed on golf course? And I think this will probably be the least biased answer we've had, because you are not currently working on a golf course. So I'm interested to hear your take on this.
Yeah, look, I'm not. You're right, and I haven't been for a long time. I think dogs. I didn't have a dog for a long time. We did have a family dog for a while at home when I was growing up, sort of thing. Sort of when I was apprentice, and I say growing up, apprentice and working on a course, but. But when I became a superintendent, I didn't have a dog. I was living on my own. I didn't have a pup. And then I had an opportunity to get a husky, because we were living in the mountains. And I've always liked huskies. Don't ask me why. Anyway, I got a Ranger husky, and you don't see them very often, the orange ones. And I called it Striker because it had 2 different coloured eyes. So it was Striker out of the X-Men movies, just randomly.
That's cool.
And
That's really cool.
And it was, but we had a little bit of a, he became a real challenge, and I wasn't able to put the time to him, so I ended up giving him off to someone who was able to take him and give him the love that he needed. And then I ended up getting a little tiny pup, a little Maltese Shih Tzu cross, and he had one eye. Incidentally, he was the runt of the litter, so I ended up calling him Sparrow for Captain Jack Sparrow, who was a pirate, even though he didn't have one eye. But it's a pirate's name. So there's a long story as well. But dogs, I think it's so good to have a sort of a team mascot in the shed. And I see that in a lot of places that have dogs. I think they just give a boost to the team morale, and it's a bit of fun. And I think it's cool. So dogs. And I've seen golf courses that are now introducing dogs as, like, they have a dog day where people can bring them out while they're playing golf. And that's cool if your dog's reasonably obedient, I guess, and sticks to you in a way. But yeah, I like dogs.
Yep.
Dogs are good.
Yep. Agree with you there. My stance is much the same. And as I mentioned when I was on this podcast, I've got my own little dog. He's a cavoodle. I bring him out mostly in the afternoons. I don't bring him in too often during the normal midweek work day, but out in the afternoon for watering. And Cranbourne did something very similar to what you just mentioned. They did a bring your dog golf day. I think it was 9 holes. You bring your dog. Yeah. And I didn't notice any dog poo after that, so everybody was very good and picked up after their dog. And
that's it, right? People respect their place of golf, and now it's becoming much more common for people to be polite like that in parks and just generally walking down the footpath. So I think it's a great thing. I really think it's a good thing. Yeah, that's
absolutely
awesome. Cranbourne are doing it too.
Yeah,
hats off.
I think so too. All right, number 3: stripes or no stripes on fairways?
Stripes. just saying. Just saying.
You are from Sydney. Well, you're not from Sydney. You're from the Blue Mountains. But this is such a Sydney thing. You guys up there, you love your stripes.
I reckon there's going to be people that were wondering which way I go there. And
yeah, I was.
And I had to put the sledgehammer down pretty quick. I love stripes. Don't get me wrong. I do. But I also appreciate when they are over the top and when they're not required. But personally, I just think they jazz up a golf course. And let's face it, a lot of the golf courses that I know of, and certainly the ones that I worked on and the ones that I've played a lot, are lesser quality courses to a Royal Melbournes and to a Cranbournes and a lot of those Royal Adelaides of the world that don't need stripes. So the courses that I like to play on and that I've played most of my career on and worked on don't have the other quality of the golf course presentation that's there. So stripes kind of lift the game a little bit, and I don't know how much other greenkeepers from, say, the Sandbelt, like yourself, mate, without being rude, I don't know how much you might consider that if you go to other places with lesser quality, or if it means anything to you. But I find personally that the stripes, if you haven't got the ability, you don't have the budget or the staff or the capacity, just doing stripes tends to lift the game enough in presentation, and people think differently of it. That's why. But I like stripes.
Good answer, mate. And I think you're pretty well on the money there. And I think it really depends on the style of course, where you're located, and what you're trying to achieve.
100%. It's horses for courses.
They certainly have their place. I'm probably being a bit of a Sandbelt snob by
that's okay. You can be
saying no stripes, but good answer, mate.
I feel I'm justifying
right.
everything. I don't know if I should be justifying things. Is that wrong? I don't know.
Feeling the pressure of being an interviewee.
Well, you know what? I'm feeling like everyone's judging me. All the ears out there are judging, so I kind of got to justify. So there could be some backlash over this. I don't know.
Wait till we get to the questions you haven't heard before.
Righto. Lay it on me. Keep going. Let's
All
go.
right. Question number 4. Green-coloured sand or natural sand?
Green. Next.
That's very much in line with the stripes question.
Again, same though. Like when we did introduce green-coloured sand at Katoomba, and like it got people talking massive. Like it changed the game of the landscape in our area with the other golf courses and how people perceived it. And then once you started seeing it, when there was a couple of times where we just lost the time to be able to do it, and we had to change back, and inadvertently for a short period of time. And all of a sudden, you're like, "Oh my God, what is that brown stain out there in the divots?" It's like it stands out so much more after your eyes just used to the softening of no real divots being so obvious. But it's and that again comes to trying to lift the game in a way that we weren't able to with a lot of the things we didn't have. So where we could try, green sand all the way.
No, that's totally understandable. I think those little 1%ers and first impressions, as you said, when you don't have the budget and the staff and perhaps even the layouts to produce something really special with the golf course that way, little things like that, they do make a massive difference. And I'm not a massive golfer, so I don't really get it in some instances, but those are the things that golfers sometimes notice. And you might put a heap of work into something else and you're really proud of it, mate, and then and then you'll get a little comment about something as small as green-coloured sand. And,
you are absolutely bang on, mate. That couldn't have been. You couldn't have uttered that in a better way, because you are quite right. Sometimes you will spend time and you'll put the effort and the hours and whatever into something else, and it goes completely unnoticed. And then you'll do something else that you'll be like, "Oh, look, let's give this a try." And all of a sudden, people come out of the woodwork and congratulating you and saying, "What a great idea, Steve!" You know, that's why didn't we do that sooner? And you're like, "Really? I didn't think that had any legs, but okay."
It's funny.
It is. That's the game we're in, right? It's hard. It's a very psychological game for course presentation, for how golfers perceive what they're on and what they're playing and how they're going about it. And sometimes it really is purely and simply a visual cue, and you don't even need the high intelligent architecture IQ to tick people's boxes. They don't care about that stuff. So
that's right. No, it's our responsibility, I think, as turf managers to do the things that do go unnoticed, and you have to be okay with that. And then every now and again, you might do something like a green sand, and you get your pat on the back from that, and you just have to accept that. You get the gratification from doing something that goes unnoticed yourself, and then you get the pat on the back for the other things.
We don't go out there to do our jobs for the pats on the back. It's nice when we get them, but that's not what we're out there. We're out there to do a job, and that's that's first and foremost. Everything else is just a little bonus if you get it. For
sure. All right, Steve, moving along. Number 5, your favourite grass variety, and I reckon I could get this one having listened to this podcast for so long, but what is your favourite grass variety?
I can tell you now that you're wrong.
Ooh. Okay.
And it's second. Santarana Cooch is my second favourite. I've got a love affair with South African Cooch.
The Santarana would have been my guess.
Yeah. So a lot of people probably have never heard me talk about South African Cooch, but and I have a love affair with Santarana, of course. But South African Cooch is just, it was the grass that a lot of the golf courses in the Blue Mountains and the central west of New South Wales used to basically sprig and grow into their fairways as they were building golf courses. And a lot of the earliest courses, when this grass came to Australia, which I'm doing some research on in the 1930s, I think it was, from South Africa, obviously, it's a really, really fine textured turf grass, South African Cooch, and it's got a unique, I suppose, it's almost a lime green style colour, but it's super fine. And a lot of, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there's certainly plenty of the modern hybrids that have used Cynodon transvalensis as a part to hybridize with. So that's part of their DNA in a sense. They use that grass because of its fine leaf texture. And I've since learnt this stuff just talking to people, and someone like Paul McLean, who I had on the podcast early on in the Keeper of the Green segment. He's such a wizard at understanding cooch, and also a few other people that I've spoken with. And South African cooch, we had it in the mountains, and they sprigged the fairways in the golf course that I grew up on. And then when I was a greenkeeper the first time, we used to cut the fairways. And back then, I mean, don't get me wrong, people, you're going to laugh at this, but we were cutting our fairways at 22 mil when I started my apprenticeship at Wentworth Falls Golf Club. And most people would say that that's almost rough height, right? But when we were cutting these fairways and you'd see it cut like nice and even and it had a good season of growth, it was the most beautiful velvet green, and that's the best way to describe it. Yep. And I'm going to just say it, and it's going to sound weird, right? But myself and my best mate, who was an apprentice with me at the same time, we would get off our fairway mowers and, when I was doing it, if he was coming past changing holes, and we'd just go and lie down in the grass. We just have a lie down. I was a first-year apprentice, I think it was, or second year or whatever, and I was lying on the fairway grass just to feel it. It's the most beautiful feeling. Random stuff, but there you go. There's all the stories coming out now.
If that's not a love affair with grass, then I don't know what is.
Maybe some stories should stay stories in my head. Maybe.
Not anymore.
There you go. Well, now the world knows. South African cooch.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
No, very good. Very good. All right. Number 6, your favourite style of golf course, and I've changed this up slightly as well.
So okay, cool.
Is it the rugged natural layout of a Barnbougle or the soon-to-be-open 7 Mile Beach, the almost Augusta-like super manicured style of the Australian, or something more in between like a Peninsula Kingswood?
Oh, you're killing me here. Okay, well, I can tell you now the Aussie's out. I don't. Okay. That's not my cup of tea, and there's nothing against the Australian. The team, Dan Cook, the superintendent, and everyone involved at the Aussie do amazing work. It's just not my cup of tea, the American style that it sort of comes across as. Wow, I absolutely love Barnbougle. I absolutely love 7 Mile, having been there not long ago to see it, fortunately, which is just going to be incredible. I'm going to go with PK. I think as much as I love Barnbougle, and here I am justifying again, as much as I love Barnbougle, I don't know that I could play it every day or regularly without, I don't know, it comes across to me as a fantastic bucket list golf course, and one that I could play certainly a couple of times a year. But PK, I've played them, and 7 Mile's not open yet, so it's a bit hard to say. But PK, until 7 Mile opens for a real comparison, I PK out of that lot every day of the week. Yeah, I just love it.
Yep, good answer, mate. I think the Melbourne Sandbell, that's one of the unique qualities it has. I always think that they do it really well, the in-between. So I'm a bit of a purist. I like my links golf. I'm not a huge fan of those more US-style super manicured courses. Yep. But I think the Sandbelt does it really well, where you've got the natural vegetation, the lay of the land, and the topography is shown off, but then the quality of the turf grass and the conditioning is there as well. So, that would be my pick if I was to pick those as well.
We weren't asking you. We're asking me. It's my turn. It's my turn.
Sorry, I'm getting used to this as well, mate.
I like it. No, mate, it's we could both talk about it for a long time, but you hit the nail on the head. You really, you box that in quite well. It's this wonderful sweet spot of everything is what's so good about the Sandbelt. And there's so many places down there that they all do it so well in their own little way, which is what makes it good as well, is that they're all different in their own little way, but Jesus, they're all good. It's amazing.
For sure. All right. Continuing in a similar vein, if you could walk around any course in Australia today, where would it be?
Oh, dude, you're killing me. Now I know why that's such a big question.
This is walk around, not play. This is walk around.
Now I know why this is such a hard question. And Yeah. I'm going to go with what a lot of people have said, and that's Royal Melbourne. And I could walk around. If I woke up every day living next door to Royal Melbourne and walked around Royal Melbourne with a morning cup of tea or even a coffee, it wouldn't matter. And I could do that, and I could never play golf again, and I would be the happiest person every morning. It's just,
wow.
And that's a big thing to say. And I've thought about this every time I ask other people, and there is just this. And I'm a big fan of Kingston Heath, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
And as you heard, PK, so many courses, but there's this weird, almost intangible aura about Royal Melbourne. And I've even tried to explain this to my brother, for example, and he's not seen it, and he doesn't get it because he says to me, Steve, I just that doesn't make sense to me. What you're trying to tell me just is it's completely impossible. But it's got this, and I don't talk about energies or auras or weird stuff like that. I say it weird without offending anyone, but there's just something about the lay of the land at RM, and when you know the history, you know the people who have walked there before you, that shaped and massaged the land to bring out that golf course and the shapes, and there's just something incredibly unbelievable about it. And that's that. If I could do that every day, I wouldn't matter that I never played golf again. There you go.
That is a really good rundown.
I don't know. I'm justifying.
Fantastic.
I'm justifying.
No. That was fantastic. All right. Now, what is your favourite golf course that you've ever played?
Hang on. We've reached number 7. Isn't that? I know you said 9. I don't know if I'm prepared to go this far.
Sorry, this is question 8.
I know. I've got 2 more.
Yes.
This one and the next one. I'm worried where we're going to go here. Okay.
No, this is Nico's naughty 9, not Steve's super 7.
My head can't get past 7. So you have
All right, number 8. What is your favourite golf course that you've played?
Kingston Heath.
Mm-hmm.
Kingston Heath. The more I think about it and I only played it 7 weeks ago, I think it was, or 8 weeks ago now, but the more I think about my game, and I absolutely loved Barnbugle. I really, really did. I thought it blew my socks off. But the more, you know what? Maybe I've got something else.
Ooh.
Can I change it mid-description?
Go on.
Yeah, look, I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to give you 2. Right. And it's Kingston Heath and St Andrews Beach. Equal billing.
Wow.
Yeah, I think.
St Andrews Beach.
Yeah, SAB for me was the most fun golf course I've ever played by a long way. And Kingston Heath is the most incredible thinkers golf course I've played in a long way. And that's, I can't split them for 2 different reasons. So, yeah, I rarely do single number ones on anything. So you've pinned me on a couple, but I'm going to put Kingston Heath and SAB up there.
That's fair enough. And listening to your Walking the Fairways episode on Kingston Heath recently.
Oh, you did? Yeah, right.
I can, and I can totally see that. But the way that you described your round and your shot selection and just how the course plays, you said it just then. It's a real thinker's golf course, and I can totally get that from listening to that episode of the podcast.
Oh, thanks, mate. It's. I mean, been watching it today for the Oz Open, and everyone's playing it. The men, women, and all the abilities are out there. And the more I look at it, the more I sit back and I just go, on face value, though, it just should be so simple. Like there's not a lot to it, or it doesn't appear to be. It's so unassuming, and that's why it's so good. It's unreal.
For sure. All right.
Okay.
We are up to number 9.
Oh, gee, finally.
What are we, 20 minutes in?
Yes, yeah, wow. Okay. Righto. Yep.
All right. Number 9, if you could play golf with anyone in the world tomorrow, who would it be?
Golf with anyone in the world tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah, if you could play, if they were your playing partner, who would it be?
Wow. That's not something I'd considered.
So this could be golfer, celebrity, anything.
Oh, do they have to be alive? That probably narrows the field a little bit better.
They probably should be alive.
It's not going to,
it's about to not be PG.
That's such a hard question.
Should we circle back to it later?
Maybe as we're talking, I'll keep that one in the back of my head because that's so. I don't. Yeah, that's terrible that I can't answer it on the spot. Maybe I don't speak highly of or think highly of celebrities or anything else. I don't know. That's terrible, isn't it?
No.
Yeah.
I actually thought that might stump you, so
you got me.
I'm sort of glad it did.
And to be fair, I strangely enough, for whatever the reasons are, I tend to play a lot of golf on my own these days. And maybe that's why I can't think of anything. Because if I'm travelling around and the wife, Bree doesn't play golf so much really at all, and if we've got the kids. So, yeah, maybe that's a little bit of it. I don't know. But I'll keep thinking. I'll come out with something in the middle of while we're chatting.
I won't let you off the hook because you can't be the only guest not to complete the questions. So at some stage, you'll have to give me something.
All right. I will. I'll think of something. Okay.
All right. So that was almost Nico's naughty night.
I love it. Sensational. Steve, well done. That was good fun.
Yeah. I thought it was great.
Yeah. I thought it was great. Isn't that a moment out of the 12th man?
All right. Moving on. So, Steve, now I want to get into the guts of this podcast episode. And I want to hear a little bit about your life, your career backstory, how you found your way into the golf industry and then out of the golf industry, and then kind of back into the golf industry with this podcast. But maybe we'll start from the beginning. What was Steve the Little Tacker like? Where did you live? How was growing up as Steve Smith?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Blue Mountains. I was born in Western Sydney originally, and eventually Dad was a supermarket store manager, and he got transferred up to the Blue Mountains, where we obviously that was where we moved to, and the whole family goes, and it was really weird because it was out in the bush, literally much more so than it is today, and the house that we moved into was at the back of the 16th tee at Wentworth Falls Country Club, so that became our backyard as kids growing up. I mean, all the roads that we lived on were dirt roads, and they were in the suburb, the township of Wentworth Falls, but they were out off the main road, off the highway, and it was dirt roads and stuff. So we were literally feeling like we were in the middle of nowhere. But the golf course was literally over the back fence. So pretty quickly, Dad signed us up as junior members into Wentworth Falls, both myself and my brother, my middle brother, the two of us. The youngest one, Paul, was a lot younger. So Chris and I were members of the golf course, and that was a way to get us out there and a sport to pick up and something to have a bit of fun with. That was when we were 9. I was 9.
Okay.
And so that was our backyard. So literally for the time until I moved away from home, being an adult and getting a job at Katoomba, I mean, I was living there, and it ended up being for the best part of probably 15 or so years that I was living there and playing golf over the back fence. So golf was with me from that time when I was 9, and you get into junior competitions, and you start playing more golf to work your way into getting a handicap, obviously, and playing in the men's competition, and you get into pennants, and I loved all that stuff. I really got stuck right into it, and there was junior camps and all sorts of things that I was able to go to, and the club, Dad was on the board at the club as well, and he he started really pushing hard to get a lot of junior things, to the point where we had junior camps at the golf club. So Wentworth Falls was hosting in the mid-90s, hosting junior camps. So there was like 50 odd kids would come from the mountains. And golf was pretty good back then in the mountains. It's not now. And there was lots of juniors. We were getting I say lots of juniors. On a men's field in the Saturday, we were back in the mid-90s, we were having the best part of, probably 15 kids playing that had a full handicap. And yeah, it's quite different. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. There were lots of, I suppose, older blokes that didn't want the young kids around in the comps that were learning the game still, but there were plenty that did, and that fostered us as well, as much as Dad did with trying to help with the junior side of things. And Dad was instrumental in the clubs in that regard, because we wanted to play golf. So we had junior camps, pros come up. We were there for a week, staying inside the clubhouse. Dad got a lot of sponsors, and he had a lot of contacts in the supermarket world. So they were donating food and things to look after us, and it was brilliant. So growing up, I loved golf, and I really loved pennants. And then as you get older and you're trying to work out what you're going to do for work and life, and Dad's always like, what are you going to do? What do you like doing? And I didn't really enjoy school, I guess. I liked it for the social side, but I was big in geography, and so I love geography and love physics. Two probably random things that may not go hand in hand. I used to love talking about black holes and hydrogen engines and all sorts of stuff. It was all a bit of fun. And geography, because we travelled a lot as a family when we were young. We basically seen most of Australia by tent and caravan. As a family, every year we go on big holidays. So I travelled a lot with the family. We'd been in so many parts of the country and seen bits of golf around. But so when it come to sort of what to do for work, I was like, do I go to uni or do I go and get a job or whatever? And there was an opportunity as an apprenticeship position opened up. And I was working on the golf course as a kid since I was 14. I used to help old Kenny Jackson, who was a former super from like the 60s. He was the gardener. So I used to go up and work some school holidays in the gardens around the clubhouse, and I'd work on the golf course, and I'd just help out sometimes.
So at 14, you were exposed to greenkeeping.
Yeah. So, because like I said, Dad was involved in the club, so there was an opportunity for some casual work from time to time that they needed some help with, and the weekends was the big one. So at the age of 15, they needed someone to be dewing the greens, removing the dew on the greens in the mornings before comp. And it helped keep the budgets down. So they wanted to get someone young. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Let me do that because I'm playing golf.
Being already, so involved in golf, to have that experience as well at such a young age, it must have been sort of symbiotic because you would have had such an appreciation of what goes into preparing the course for the game that you love. And then perhaps it helped your golf as well because you understood a little more of the other side of how a golf course is set up and everything that goes into it.
Absolutely it did. And that was one of Dad's sort of things that I think he probably was always wondering whether that I probably might go towards doing an apprenticeship, or he was trying to help, me decide whether that was a right place to go on a golf course, because I love golf and I always wondered whether I had enough, talent, I guess, or enough drive to be any good at the game of golf. I used to work in the pro shop and help out Jeff Mansfield, who it was at the time, was a pro. Pardon me. Jeff Mansfield was a pro, and I was working at the back of the shop, as a proper job. I help out sometimes and do a little bit of work in school holidays and things. But Dad was always like, you can, if you want to be better at golf, the learning and understanding the golf course might be helpful. It might give you the edge over someone else who might not know the details. And so that opportunity of working weekends, it did go hand in hand because I really did get an inside look as to what it took to prepare a course, what goes on. And when you're a kid that age, you're seeing machinery. And my grandfather on mum's side, they were Italians that come over to Australia, and they were farmers. So when I was growing up as a kid, we would go out to the farm in northwestern Sydney at Dural Way, and there was a farm. Like I was 6 years old, and I remember sitting on the tractors and doing all that sort of stuff, and being Italians and farmers, and that's all goes hand in hand. So I kind of had that exposure and green thumb, if you like, in the family from my grandparents, and I loved all that side of it, and that was always there, I guess, as well. But yeah, to work on the golf course at a young age was really fun, and like I said, all the machinery, the shed was like the biggest building in the world. You got all this stuff.
In hindsight, it probably wasn't.
It was far from the biggest. I mean, I think Richard at Royal Melbourne's probably got one of the biggest sheds I've ever seen, and it was probably a postage stamp compared to that. But yeah, so that was really interesting and fun. But I was a really shy kid in a social sense and with people I didn't know. So I think Dad and Mum knew that as well, and that was kind of a little bit of trying to help me get more out, being a little bit more outgoing. But I really struggle. I still struggle with that, strangely enough. But so it was really cool to have all those things. And working weekends, again, that was when I got that, apart from traveling and camping and stuff, working first light in the morning and getting the machine out on the weekend to, whether it be driving the quad around or the dew broom on and that sort of stuff, and little story, sidetrack. My very first day working the Saturday morning,
Yep.
we had four-wheel motorbikes at Wentworth Falls at that time. So they were the coolest thing in the world to ride. Full-size ones, right? Full farming-size ones, and I'm 15.
Is this a quad bike or an actual two-wheel motorbike?
No, proper quad bike.
Quad bike. Yep.
It was a proper quad bike, and you could sit the tube room on it, so you could carry stuff, and they put baskets on the front and the back and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day was misty, as the mountains gets, and I was out there first thing, and I was driving around the back of the 10th Dam. There's a little bridge to cross at the time, and you go between two gum trees that were the width of the bridge. Now, on a quad bike and you're sitting a tube room on the front, it's quite wide. It's significantly wider than the quad bike.
Yeah.
So I'm on my way to the putting green, and I completely misjudged the trees and the width of the bike, and I managed to snap the broom in half. Before, so needless to say, I was absolutely peaking out at the first weekend on the first day by myself.
You're thinking, no, I'm going to get fired on my first day.
I was flipping, right? So I remember driving back to the shed. When I say I snapped in half, I snapped the handle in half.
Yeah.
And it snapped right at the base, I should say. So I had no handle. And I remember going back to the shed, and back in the days you had landlines. That's how long ago we're talking, in the mid-90s. And I called Dad at home, and I told him the story, and he come down, and he come into the shed, and we grabbed a couple of tools and managed to dodgy up the tube room handle enough that I could go out there and finish the job. But that was my very first morning on my own on a weekend, ready for the comp, and I had to be out there early. And man, I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life, I'm sure. It was just...
And now it's just a really cool story.
Yeah, cool or boring, depending on who's listening and what they think.
It's quite funny.
I still laugh and think about it, but it was a misty day. It was everything. It had everything for it. You couldn't see the best part of 30, 40 metres, so I was really feeling isolated apart from being the only one on the golf course and it being barely light. So it was this horrible, my heart sank, and I thought I'd literally lost my job. I literally thought I lost my job. But
Mate,
Dad saved the day.
On what you've said so far, you must be so thankful to your dad just for getting you involved in golf, and he obviously saw that you had either a bit of talent or you were interested in it, and he stuck with it, and obviously his connections with the golf course. But it seems like that's spurred you on to what's ended up being a lifetime affinity with the game and essentially your career.
Look, the golf industry. I mean, it's you always look up to your parents. You look back on your life, I think, and that's when you really start to appreciate. And when you have kids of your own, you start to appreciate a little bit more just what your parents do for you when you're a kid. You don't notice it when you're a kid. You've got no idea that they're always there watching and helping. But yeah, absolutely. Everything goes to mum and dad for so many parts of my life and everything that you do growing up. But that early start and the passion that Dad was able to put into the club and help us as kids and the friends that I had as juniors playing golf and the start of my career and in greenkeeping, all of those things. And like I said, I think a big part of what I really love about what I do now, in a sense, is traveling around and talking to people is that I've traveled there. We did so much traveling. Dad wanted to do a big family holiday every year. And so every spring holidays, the October holidays for school in New South Wales, we would go on a 2 or 3 week trip. Sometimes we'd take time off in the term, and we drove to Perth once, 6 weeks in a caravan.
Wow.
So Dad wanted to, he could drive and he wanted to take the car, and we would experience all the in-betweens. It wasn't a fly to a capital city and experience a city. It was a drive and experience the journey and what's in between. So I got to have this real, and that's Mum and Dad. I mean, Dad was driving the car literally, but Mum was looking after us as well every other day of the week and getting us through school and helping us in the other times. So both Mum and Dad, I owe them everything in life in the start that we got, certainly the start that I got as well, specifically. But it was the travel, it was the things we did, it was the seeing the country, and I may never get an opportunity. I don't know if I'll get the opportunity to do what I did as a family, as a kid, to take my kids around and see the countryside in the way that we did. I mean, it's really raw, right? We were camping on the Nullarbor Plains
Wow.
And we're
That's cool.
the only people at that site on a big rock, and there's storms rolling across the Nullarbor near Balladonia, and it's just wild. Some of the things I've been fortunate enough to experience, and all that blends into golf because it's the landscape of golf, and that's why I think I have all that enjoyment out of seeing the land and understanding the land and the sport of golf and the architecture, and it's just all of the things that I'd had as a kid, and talking about it out loud is really interesting that you can roll it up into one sport of golf and nothing else even comes remotely close to what golf and the landscape of golf and the career of greenkeeping can offer. Nothing comes close.
Mate, that's so cool. I can hear it in your voice, the passion that you have for golf and for family, and I really hope that you do get to give your own kids that experience, whether it be on as big a scale as you did or just a smaller sort of, camping holiday. I see on your social media that you're starting to take them away more and more now. So, I really hope that you get to give them that experience and give them those memories. So I guess now you're 14 years old, you're working part-time or casual at the golf course, you're playing a lot of golf, school's not probably your top priority. So how do you go from that to full-time work as a turf manager?
Yeah, so the opportunity was there as an opening for an apprenticeship, and I applied for that job at Wentworth Falls, went through the interview process and was ultimately offered the job as an apprentice, and I found it difficult. I actually tried to take that role in year 10 because I wasn't sure where school was going to go, and I just couldn't be in an adult world. I just didn't feel ready, so I went back to school to go to year 11, finish year 11 and 12, and then took what was then available to again in 2 years later they had another opportunity. So I went through the process and was offered the job and got the gig, and then you just stick to your guns and you do what you're there to do. I mean, you're there to I had a passion for the golf course because it was my home paddock. It was the backyard. I was there every day, whether I was working or not. I was there every day, and I really loved it and I enjoyed it. And as you go through TAFE, I found TAFE initially a bit of a thing because we had to go down to Richmond, which was 45 minutes away. Not far, but it was far enough, and you see all different.
And you're catching the train to get there?
No, I had a car, so I was able to drive.
Okay, so you're 18, you have a car.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So when I started my apprenticeship, I was 18 then, and I had my Ps, and I had a car, so I was able to drive down and do the TAFE thing. And then the TAFE was I was never really into, like I said, I was right into physics, and I loved all that, and I would love my geography, and I loved my geology. And I suppose then Hort kind of had some of that stuff. I turned out that I was really good with soils and the science behind the greenkeeping component. I enjoyed the Hort side of it, obviously the plant life and biology and those things as well. But I ended up winning awards without blowing my own horn. I won a couple of awards through TAFE, highest marks, and the soil stuff was Western Sydney.
Oh, wow.
Western Sydney had some award nights for the education campuses in that part of the city, and so I had won awards through that as well. That was for soil sciences and that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed that side of it. That was a really niche part of school that I kind of did like, and ended up doing well with that as well. So that was great. And then I was still playing golf and still playing pennants while I was working. Probably playing arguably more golf then because I had every afternoon after work, and some of those are short days, and it was over the back fence. So I literally used to play golf every day.
What a cool time of your life.
Yeah. Look, and I was still living at home because I was 22 by the time I finished my apprenticeship, and I'm thinking, well, if I'm working next door, why do I want to move further away from work?
Exactly.
Mum and Dad, are you okay? And thankfully, Mum and Dad were cool with it. I had, it was a big enough house, and so I did. I stayed at home for a while and walk. I used to walk to work every morning. It was about I think it was the half of the 17th hole, and then I walk across, down the side of the 18th tee, across the first to 10th fairways, and in the shed. It was the best part of it.
You must have been saving. You must have been saving some serious cash.
Oh, mate, yeah, it was, seriously so. But I think my first pay packet back then was $195 as a first year apprentice. So I still remember that, and then I got a pay rise as the award went up. I think that later on, and went to second year, it was $215. So there you go. I think I still have that somewhere, but it's So I really did enjoy my time as an apprentice, but I was really interested in doing more things with the golf course. Like, I always wanted to push boundaries, and that was kind of one of the things that, for better or worse, I really always wanted to keep improving the golf course. And that's really difficult when, one, you don't know much and you don't care that you don't know much because you're just like, I can do this place better than anyone else can, And two, you're still learning. So you're underneath the superintendent. So you're trying to want to do stuff, but you've got to be mindful that you are in a position that, you can't just go and tell your boss what he should be doing. So it wasn't that I ever did that, but I ended up getting into the role of assistant superintendent at Wentworth Falls when the 2IC moved on at the time. So I got that.
How old would you have been then, Steve?
So I got assistant. It was literally straight after I finished my time. So I was 22 when I got to the assistant role.
That's very young to be moving into a management position.
Yeah, look, and I don't know if it was a combination of the club didn't maybe have the funds to keep the I suppose the team with more qualifieds, like having an extra. Yep. There would have been 3 of us qualified, the super, an assistant, and then me, for example. And then apprentices. So they went down the path of when the assistant had moved on. I took the role as super. I was given the opportunity to take the role as assistant super, I should say, underneath the superintendent, Dino, and then we ended up getting another apprentice on. So it kept the budget, I suppose, within a reasonable number for the club. Yes, I was young, but I was thinking like I could do more, and I always really wanted to. Like I said, I just wanted to. So within me, I wanted to do more, and I just had to bide my time, but. My boss then, Dino, he'd been at the club for a long time, and that was normal back then. That's the early 2000s. I think Dino had been at the club for something like 20 years, and all the other supers at the clubs around us had all been there for like 15 plus. So no one was really going anywhere. And I'm like, this is, I don't know where to go, and I don't really want to move away from the mountains because I love this part of the world, and I only really know this part of the world, and I was still a bit shy and young and naive about how I would feel in the big bad world on my own. So I stayed as an assistant. I'd only just gone assistant, but I still wanted to do so much more. And then in the end, there was an opportunity. So I was assistant for a year and a half, and the opportunity had come up at Katoomba for the role of superintendent when that superintendent had moved to another club locally.
And how far is that from Wentworth Falls?
So Katoomba's 15 minutes drive.
Okay.
So I was making the bit. Well, hey, I had to go from walking to work to driving to work, right? So it was a 10-minute walk or a 15-minute drive. These are the things you had to consider.
The defining factors.
Yeah, all first world problems, right? So
exactly.
So I was becoming maybe I was too young and thought I knew everything. And we go through those times in our lives, don't we? I mean,
so you were what, 24?
I was 23.
23. I was getting echoes of Tim Warren on the podcast. I think it was Penola Golf Club when he was 21, and basically exactly what you said.
So I don't feel like I really had the golf course at heart. Like I so wanted to do so much to that club, and in my time at Wentworth Falls, like I had the opportunity to build we got Jamie Dawson, who's an architect based out of Canberra, Envirolinks Designs, and that was back 24 years ago. We got Jamie in to rebuild our fourth green at the time, and I was given the role. I'd just been qualified, I think, or 20. Yeah, it was 22 years ago. I'd just been qualified. I was given the role of managing that project. So I basically built that green. And then the next year we built the 10th green at Wentworth Falls, and that was done with a design in-house that I did. I put something forward to the club, and they liked it.
Wow.
And then I got to manage that project of building that one. So I'd had 2 green construction jobs under my belt within 18 months, and
that's some great experience there.
Oh, yeah, and, it was stone cold. Like, I had no other experience, but I really, I researched it, and my boss, Dino, he was there, and he was making sure that he was happy with everything, obviously. I wasn't going rogue.
No, Dean, we're doing it this way. Yeah. We're doing it my way.
Yeah, so, had a little bit of time working with Jamie Dawson and understanding that side of it. I mean, I was redesigning Wentworth Falls Golf Course on paper during my HSC exams, because if I finished the paper early, and I hated English, and I'd finished early at English, right, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I think I didn't answer the question properly in one of the essays, so I'd finished early. I'm like, it's 15 minutes to go. What am I going to do? So I think it was the 6th green at the time I was redesigning, and I was doing that in the hall, while everyone else was trying to nut out there. I'm redesigning the golf course.
And then they've actually ended up using one of your designs.
Well, I no, not one of those ones. I'd completely done a different one for 10 when they decided they want to rebuild 10. Because it had a lot of drainage issues, and they knew it was a limiting factor of the playability of the course. It would go under first. So I put a design forward, and the club and the board liked it, and so they went with that proposal, and we did that one. And then, like I said, I just wanted to keep doing more. Now, I don't think there was anything limiting the golf club from doing it, but I really wanted to get my hands as a superintendent's role, and it wasn't going to happen at Wentworth Falls. Dean was doing a great job, and the club were happy with him, so that wasn't going to happen. And then the job at Katoomba come up. So I applied for that, and there was only 2, as it turned out, 2 of us that applied, because Katoomba was really in a struggle street at that time with a development that was not going well, and the golf club wasn't travelling well, but I really wanted to have a crack.
So was it an established course, 18-hole course?
Yeah. It was the smallest sized 18-hole golf course in the mountains. It was the best part of 80-something years old at the time.
Okay, so some good history there.
Yeah, lots of history. And it was a well-known golf club. Everyone around knew it, but it was starting to struggle because the development was half-baked, and the club was torn up, and lots of temporary greens for the development side, and people were starting to walk away. And then the superhead there had left, so the job was out. So I applied for the job and ended up getting the gig, and I found out it was because I took the offer that was, I didn't ask for more money, but it was more than what I was on. So I think I was the cheapest crack at it, as it turned out.
There's a few worrying factors in here, like the supers left.
Yeah.
Financially going too well. And you got the job because you didn't ask for more money.
Yeah. So
you take it anyway.
All of those things, because I really wanted to be in charge and have a go at putting my ideas forward and trying to lift the game of a golf course at Katoomba that they weren't doing so well because they didn't have the budget. So I was like, well, I think I can do something here. If it's been vacated, I'll have a crack. And what's the worst that can happen?
You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah. So I was still in the mountains.
So what?
So so I got that gig. So I was 23 when I got that job as super, and there was the day that I'd started at Katoomba was probably one of the scariest days I reckon I've had as a greenkeeper and as a manager, and I was out there in the deep blue sea, and that's when you realise what it means to be out in the deep blue sea. It's like moving out of home for the first time, right? You got to cook, you got to clean, you got to look after yourself, and no one's there to help. But when you step away and you think you're too big and too good and you know everything out of a golf course as an assistant, and then you go and take on the role as super, and all of a sudden you're it, and the buck stops with you. I had an experience where we had a couple of greenkeepers that were working in the team, and we had a casual. And day one, I was like, just do the basic stuff, guys. We're just going to make a start on the day, and I'll start to learn my lay of the land and get my head around some bits and pieces. So, as you were, sort of in a sense, make sure everything's cool.
Sounds
and just
fair enough.
Do what you do, and I'm just going to settle my feet in and get my head around the space. And the tractor that we had was this little Massey 35X tractor. Great little beast it was. Didn't have any brakes. And I didn't know that. And none of the boys, it was normal apparently, and none of the boys mentioned anything. And the casual guy was on it. And he was trying to, and we had a lot of steep hills at Katoomba, and he was trying to negotiate the hill that he was on. And a tractor weighs, 2.5, 3 tons for a small one. No brakes, so you always have it in gear while you're on a hill. And he had changed it out of a gear and couldn't get it back into the next gear, because once you start rolling and there's no synchros and all that sort of stuff, I remember watching it, and he'd gone, let's say he rolled 2 meters, but I knew what was happening. I knew he had no control because he was panicking, and he grabbed the steering wheel and steered it into the hill so it was sort of going to go back uphill. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he goes, "It's got no brakes." And I just gone, "What are you talking about?" And that was in the morning. It wasn't the very first job, but that was in the morning. And my heart sank, and I thought to myself, and I pictured that he was going straight down this hill, and I wasn't going to stop.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at him, and I said, "Mate, get off it, park it, however we can park it, and we'll leave it there, and I'll work out how I'm going to get this thing back to the shed, and I will call." At the time, the only mechanic I knew, the club didn't have anyone that was a mechanic that would help them out. So the only mechanic I knew was our mechanic from Wentworth Falls, Wally, a little Swiss fellow who's about 4'5", and he was a little wizard, was Wally. But I called Wall and I said, "Mate, Wall, I need a really big favour. I need you to come up to the club, and I need you to have a look at this tractor to see if we can do these brakes, because it's our only real machine to get around the golf course with. We had no utility vehicles or anything." So they used to put a little trailer on this tractor, and Wally said, "No worries," and he come up, but that moment happened the very first day, and that's when I was like, "This is real," and I never understood what it meant not to have someone standing over you like a parent does when you're a kid, right? Just to make sure that you don't do anything stupid, and they can pick up the big problems. That was my first big problem, and it was nearly an accident. It wasn't an accident, thankfully. And we've all had those moments where there's been near misses in our careers. But I was like, that was nearly a disaster. And I really understood what it meant to be the person responsible for everyone in the workplace. And that was a really big moment.
Luckily, nothing major went wrong, and then you felt that weight of responsibility straight away.
Oh, look, and like I said,
I'm sure, you probably matured 10 years in that moment.
And I remember getting on the phone at the end of that day. I went home and I rang my best mate, who was my fellow apprentice at Wentworth Falls at the time. We'd gone through school together, and we were apprentices together at Wentworth Falls. And I rang Chris, and I said his nickname was Blob. That's another story. And I rang Blob. He'll hate me for saying that on the podcast too, by the way. Our GM, what we had at Katoomba, as fast forwarding, ended up only knowing him as Blob. Didn't know his name.
Well, Blob, if you are listening, I take no blame for that.
Anyway, I love throwing that one in because it will really wind him up. So I rang Chris and I told him the story, and I said to him, I don't know what I've done. I said, I think I've made the wrong decision. And I think I left a very good job to go somewhere that isn't a very good place. And I don't think I'm ready, and I've completely balls this up. And he talked some sense into me, and along with mum and dad and everyone else that I'd spoken with as well about the first day concerns. And then you go back to work and you shake everything off that you question mark yourself over, and you go, right, how do we problem solve? And that's what I really loved about the job of being a superintendent, is the problem solving that you go through, and all the challenges that there are. That's a lot of the fun that I enjoy as well. And
Sure.
That happened on the first day. So so at the age of 23, day one, it was July 1, 2003 that I got the job, and at Katoomba Golf Club as my first role as superintendent. And that was how I got to that point. And from that moment on, albeit a weirdly challenging first day, I loved every minute of it for the next 9-something years.
Thanks for sharing that, Steve. That was a really good sort of rundown of the early part of your career and stepping into your first superintendent's position. A really interesting story of your first day as well. So, Katoomba Golf Club, how was your time after that there as a superintendent? Were there any big projects? Did any big developments going on at the club?
Yes.
And so talk us through your time there.
Yeah. So look, it was an unbelievably emotional career roller coaster at Katoomba, because after the first year, I think it was, the developer who'd started that project and he'd been working on and off it for a long time went broke. And so in 2004, we were all told that we were just about to lose our jobs. Yeah, so I was thinking to myself, this has been a great career move, Steve. You're about to lose your job. And what ended up happening was someone else got involved with the project, another developer, if you like, and everything changed dramatically. And I mean turned upside down on its head. We went from, I had no utility vehicles, and we had barely enough money to buy fuel every week in a couple of jerry cans, to a company who'd come in to own the development, and they were, ended up being financially supporting and being involved with the club, that they wanted Katoomba to be their little project and their baby, and they were golf mad. And so here we are coming full circle in a heartbeat to, they said, Steve, we know we've got some work to do on the golf course. We've got to, as part of the development that took up some of the golf course land, there were some outstanding works to get the golf course up with 18 full-size greens, no more temporaries, rejigging some of the golf holes. And so it was a proper 18-hole layout as per the design plan that Ted Sterling had done. And I've had Ted on the podcast before. Ted's an architect who built Riverside Oaks in Western Sydney and Bonville. Bonville up the north coast at Coffs Harbour. So Ted was, he was a professional. He'd been the professional at Kingston Heath during his time as a pro and all that sort of stuff. So, so Ted was in the pro shop, and I knew about the development. I knew about the golf course. That was part of the reason why I went there, but it was never really looked like it was going to happen. So anyway, the developer went broke, new people come in, and then everything turned on its head. So we went from having nothing to, to having almost, in a sense, everything in a way, but we had the support. That was the biggest thing. People with the means to give us what we needed and to help us get to where we wanted to go. And they wanted it to get there, because at the end of the day, they were selling the houses next door. So,
for sure.
Straight away, everything started coming in. We had big machines coming in to do the work on the golf course. We had greens straight away. The greens that were sitting there that had been constructed and let decay because they couldn't finish them off, they stripped them off. They said, Steve, we're just going to truck bent turf up here from Melbourne and turf them. Are you okay with that? And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Of course I'm okay with that.
I thought I wasn't going to have a job 2 weeks ago, and then you're talking about.
And that's exactly how it was. It was this weird turnaround. So all of a sudden,
did all the staff retain their jobs?
Yeah, everyone was kept on, as we were, and then I had an opportunity at that moment. We only had 3 people looking after 18 holes. So when you say everyone, there was all 3 of us. And mind you, like if we renovated greens, we had to shovel the 90-10 sand into the trailer of the tractor and then drive it to each green and shovel it off and spread it manually by hand and then rub it in with level lawns by hand.
Oh.
It used to take us 2 days for the three of us to top dress and renovate the greens.
And that's after picking up all the cores probably by hand.
Yeah, that's right. So,
yeah.
I mean, and we didn't have in-ground sprinklers. We had no infrastructure. We had hoses and knocker sprinklers on greens and tees, nothing in fairways. It was an old archaic system from essentially the 50s and 60s. Asbestos pipe, asbestos cement main lines and all sorts of, and lots of people still have that infrastructure around. But all the other courses in the mountains had upgraded their stuff. So, but Katoomba didn't, they were going to get that with the development, but it never happened. So then all of a sudden things started to turn and we got machinery and we got staff. And when they committed to wanting to make Katoomba this fantastic golf course, and Steve, you've got the reins, you tell us what we need to do and how we're going to get there. So I said, look, and my old boss said to me, you're going to Katoomba. This was my old boss from Wentworth Falls. He said, you can't take Chris, my mate who was an apprentice with me. He said, you can't touch Chris for 2 years. You can't take him. I was just joking, a bit of a laugh. And, 2 years later, literally, I was in a position where the club said to me, what do you need? And I said, well, I need a good assistant. I need someone who can help me as an experienced, qualified greenkeeper. And I know someone who I want to make an offer the job to. And they said, righto, here's the package if you're okay with that, and make the offer. And I did, and Chris said yes, and he came over to us. So all of a sudden there was the two of us, plus two apprentices. And we went for it. We were shooting for the moon. And we
would have been feeling on top of the world at this point.
Mate, well, that was the first time. So in 2 years, I finally had, and it's probably a little bit rude, but it wasn't in a rude way that I say I finally had someone working with me that I knew had the ability to do the job as good as I could. I had the utmost trust in Chris as my assistant, as my best mate. We still catch up all the time over the phone, albeit, but I knew that in him and in me, we could literally do what we wanted and we could get there because we knew how to, and we had the guts to go for it. And
that's pretty awesome. You had that youthful exuberance as well.
Oh, mate, I was 25 by then. I was all experienced, and I was ready to go. So we finally had the ability and the means to do it. I mean, they didn't come in and say, okay, Steve, we're going to build you a new shed and give you a whole new fleet. We were selective. We still had to go through the right processes with people. There was still money involved. But every step was the right step, and we were going to building the future. So then they'd finished the course works by this in rejigging the 18, so it was a growing process. And then it wasn't long before the next phase came where the developers said, look, Steve, we talked to you a bit. We know you've got plans for the golf course. We want you to tell us what you think is next in terms of what can we do to the golf course to make it a more appealing and a better golf course to play. So I said, look, I think we need to do some bunker work. I think we need to challenge and trick up the golf course. It's a par 69 golf course. It was just over 5,000 metres long. This is a short golf course. And it was a small area golf course. It was the best part of 27 hectares.
Okay.
I know golf courses that have nearly got that as fairways.
Oh, yeah,
right.
Sure.
So especially
you're thinking we need to protect this a bit better, or with
so
bunkering.
There was only, I think there was at the time there was only 5 bunkers on the golf course, and I'm like, okay, as an A grader, I was playing off 4. I kind of had some ideas, and so I put a proposal to them, and they said, righto, that's cool. We've just heard that Bonneville are rebuilding their bunkers, and we know some of the people in the management up there pretty well. You've talked about wanting to add some bunkers to the golf course. We like where they are. We like what this is all about. The club agreed, and they said, now, the one thing is here, obviously we get a lot of rain. So in the mountains, averages around 1,500 mil per year of rainfall, so about 1.5 metres.
Wow.
It's a completely different ball game to Melbourne, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
A lot of rain And summer is the worst. We average around 300 mil per January, that sort of stuff. That's half your yearly rainfall, I think, or thereabouts.
Just about.
So,
this year, yeah.
So storms are wild. We get lots of downpours. Washouts is an issue. Maintenance is going to be a problem. Steve, there's probably not too many places to get much more water that are comparable to you, but Coffs Harbour, as it turns out, gets over 2 metres of rain a year. Now, if Bonneville are rebuilding theirs, we want you to go up and see how they're going about it, because they're using the latest and greatest. And go up there, you'll get a tour around, see the super. I think it was Chris. I can't remember his name at the time. And so we got a tour. We got to stay there. We got to play there. They said, go and take it all in and learn everything you can. And then adapt what you're seeing there with the bunkers to how you want to build them here. And I was like, okay, cool. So this was before the concrete things of the world and the
capillary concrete.
Yeah. That's right. The capillaries and the polymers and all sorts of bunker liners these days. The latest out then was the fabric materials.
Yeah,
and
I've got them in my bunkers.
Well, mate, we went over the top because I had the budget to do so, knowing how much rain we get, and I built them, probably over-constructed or over-engineered them. And I've seen them to this day, and they haven't been maintained for 11 years, and they are still intact.
Wow.
And albeit some of the bunkers have gum trees growing out of the middle of them now, right? But in places, they're still there. We went OTT, right, properly, and we had we wanted to do that because we didn't want, but you didn't. I think maintenance also adds an element of wear that you don't. So the fact that they haven't been maintained for 10 years has also been helpful to their longevity in a way, because your rakes and everything that affects them. But we were building bunkers. My design, I was absolutely loving every bit of it. And we did a lot of work, and then we were doing some gardens that we wanted to introduce. I got to landscape the entire clubhouse precinct. With gardens and cool climate gardens. Again, I had to put plans forward and see if everyone was happy with what we were wanting to do there. So I got to landscape everything up at the clubhouse, from the curb out in the street all the way back to the first tee, and then I got other things to do. So we built up our team to 5 ground staff, 5 greenkeepers. We had 2 qualifieds and 3 apprentices, and then I had 2 gardeners full time.
Wow!
Just to look up. So we got to a point where the Blue Mountains is well known for its gardens in wintertime and springtime, and all the colours of the seasons and the rainbows and everything that come with. That's what they're known for, and so we wanted to match that. So we got to a point where we had weddings coming to our golf course because of the garden. So we were competing as a wedding venue, as a photography location. We were competing as we were getting the garden. The people that would travel to the Blue Mountains to view the private gardens that were open, they were coming to the club to see ours.
That's so cool. And what a vote of confidence by the club. Letting you build and design those bunkers and the gardens as well. So you did all the plant selection, everything for that.
The whole lot. I was going around studying Paul Sorensen's gardens around the Blue Mountains, and he's very well known up there he designed a lot of gardens in the mountains for the Fairfax family and Lura and some of the well-established homes, did a lot in Canberra as well. So I was studying what he had done and learning a lot about what worked, what didn't work. I was trying different things, and it was a massive vote of confidence. And I was loving the whole ride, don't get me wrong, but I was single, so I had the time. I was unattached, had no kids, living on my own by then, and so I had
pulling some hours.
Yeah, mate, and I didn't care. I had the ability to do it. I think it worked. Don't get me wrong, it worked for the club, it worked for the developers, it worked for everyone else, and it worked for me. And that's the other thing. So that was my way of doing it. I had the ability to do so, and I had a great assistant helping me. I built a hand-picked team with great young people involved as apprentices that were keen to learn. We had a hoot. It was just the most incredible time, and I would never say, I would never change it. I'd never say I want to change it. And we were shooting for the stars. I mean, we had the developers organised a couple of charity days every year for the final few years of the golf course was still existing. where we had outside broadcasts on site by 2GB in Sydney. At the time, they were the number one radio station in Australia.
Okay.
So we had the Manly Seagulls Football Club, which just happens to be my favourite team. The developers had sponsored them at the time, so the whole team came up for the charity day. I was playing with Campbell Brown from the Gold Coast Suns in a Pro-Am. We had so much going on up there by the time we were getting good. And
you're thinking this can only keep going upwards.
And we settled on the work. Because we'd spent a long time, a few years in a row, working on the course. So it was like, let everyone start to enjoy it. Give everyone a break. Give the membership a break from doing construction and making it better. Let them enjoy what's better.
Yep.
And then we'll start the new phase of work in time. So we were having an absolute whale of a time getting to do, I always wanted to do my own design stuff and be in charge of preparing a golf course and presenting it for events. And I had absolutely so much fun doing it, and it was a lot of hard work and a lot of time spent there, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I don't speak very often about it because people don't like. I always say people don't really care to hear about your stories, and here I am getting stories from everyone else. I always thinking about mine, but I don't think I can speak more passionately about the passion I had for what I finally got, which was my hands to be in control and be the superintendent at Katoomba, to lead what that was. Whether I was good, bad, or indifferent is up to everyone else to judge. And unfortunately, it's not there anymore. So in 2013, it was an absolute full stop. The club went into administration, they closed up the doors, and we were told we all lost our jobs.
How does that happen when things are going so well and you've got corporate golf and all these things happening? You're not probably bleeding money anymore doing construction, because that's the expensive part. You're probably making money at this stage.
I think
theoretically.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't into the way the club was being managed in the books. I don't know how. And don't get me wrong, I was doing what I was doing outside on course. There was a lot of stuff happening in the clubhouse. They rebuilt the clubhouse. There was lots of things going on as well. There was, I say, when I hear developments being involved in clubs and clubs being supported by companies and businesses, a similar thing happened up at Cessnock Golf Club in the Hunter Valley. A company was in charge of a development there, as they tend to be, and a lot of the time you find they're construction companies. Ours was a construction company. A construction company was involved up there at Cessnock, and a very similar thing happened where they were working on course and rebuilding the course, and then all of a sudden it went belly up. But mate, how you do financing and stuff in companies, I've got no clue, and I'm far from the right person to understand the corporate world. But it's got to do with that corporate world and how things are structured and how things are done. So I don't know a lot of how that works. Everyone speculates, and we all speculated. And a lot of people were very angry, and rightly so.
Was there warning, or was it basically everything's going well, and then the tap is turned off?
There was warning. The tap was being turned down, and we knew things were tightening up, and we knew there were challenges, but no one knew that we were going to be closed up. And that's what had been threatened by us the first year into my job, when that developer at the time was when he went broke. In the end, these developers ended up going by the same way, but there was no one to step in. So the club couldn't stand on its 2 feet at that point? They'd been trying to, apparently, which we were unknown to which way it was working. So apparently they'd been doing so for the previous 12 months, and that's when they couldn't keep going. So when it gets to a certain point, I think is, again, the corporate world, mate, you can go headlong into that stuff too. But when the club...
How did that feel on that day?
Mate, that was horrific. That was like... it was the most incredible pain I think I'd experienced without experiencing a loss of a loved one or anything like that. It was an emptiness that I couldn't understand, and I had to hear my team members be told the same news after I was told. So I was told first, and then everyone was called up, and then they were told, and I I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what would happen. You lose your job. I had a mortgage. I have my own house, and you think of all those things. Other people had families, so I can understand why lots of people were really angry about it. And when it comes from nowhere, of course you're going to be angry as you try and understand and reconcile what's just been told to you and what's happening. I don't really, it was weird. But I look back on it. It took me a little bit of time to get my head around it, but not too long, because I was like, I've just had an incredible time, and I suppose it can't always be like this. So I looked at it in a positive way. I loved everything that we'd done, and I thought, okay, well, I don't know where to from here. And you make decisions and you do what you do. I was seeing then Bree, and we weren't married, we were together. Yeah. And she sort of said to me, why don't you start your own business and go into sort of landscape maintenance and sort of look after people's lawns in a private sense. Do what you were doing, because I couldn't really see myself getting a job somewhere else.
So there was no thought really into climbing the hill again and going back into turf management.
I struggled, and maybe it left a sour taste in my mouth, and maybe it was the path that I'd had, but I really struggled with the thought of going to another golf course where I wasn't going to be superintendent.
Yep.
And I don't know whether that's a right or wrong mentality to have after you've been a superintendent. You still want to learn, but I really enjoyed putting my stamp on it, and I wanted to do that again. And I didn't see anywhere locally that could do that, because they all still were superintendents that have been there for years. So, Bree said to me, why don't you try that? And then as it turned out, because administrators had stepped in, again, the corporate world, they asked me to caretake the site whilst they were doing whatever they were doing, because it could be sold to somebody else.
That's right. Yeah. So they can't let it get overgrown.
So they didn't want
someone needs to be there.
That's right. So they didn't want it to drop away altogether. So they approached me, and I started my business, and I was able to have someone else working with me. We were cutting green still, but we weren't preparing a golf course for golf. We were just caretaking. So it was minimum.
Were they selling the machinery? That was all still there?
Everything stayed as it was, and that went for a few months in the end, which was helpful.
I'll bet.
So yeah. So that was huge. So I didn't lose out a great deal, and I was still going to work, and that was for the administrators. And then eventually that wore off, and I was trying to find other jobs in at the time as a contractor, just looking after people's properties up in the mountains. So, I didn't know if I wanted to go somewhere and be an assistant. I don't think I had this headspace. I wasn't in that frame of mind to go and learn more again. I really enjoyed the mountains. I knew the mountains. I love the mountains, and I love the mountains golf courses, and there was no opportunities up there. So I just moved away and sort of still stayed connected. I was running an industry golf day for the Blue Mountains in the central west of New South Wales every year. So my way of connecting with people through the years after that, even though I was not working on a golf course, was I was still catching up with everyone, helping to organise this Greenkeepers Golf Day with the industry in the Central West, which I was doing beforehand, and then I was still doing afterwards, but I wasn't working on a course. So I was still talking all the reps and still talking all the supers, and just not working on a golf course day to day. So that was how I stayed connected.
Did that take a bit of the sting out of it, do you think?
It totally did. Mate, I still had enough of a connection and probably had it for too long, but it kept me very much in the mentality and in the mind space of still being a greenkeeper at heart. It softened the blow deluxe, and I felt like then I was trying to give back in a way. I was able to have a bit of connectivity. And in the West, and this podcast is going to come out after Jason Size from Mudgee Golf Club that I've just done. The Central West is separated by distance, 100 kilometres or more between golf courses, and people don't get to catch up regularly. And we all had that one day a year when we could catch up. So it was a great way for me to catch up with anyone. And if anything ever, I suppose, arose that there was an opportunity for work, maybe I would have a look at it. Nothing ever did. But I was still connected with everyone and connected within the industry. So it certainly softened the blow.
that day, like, again, I've probably used this too many times, but you must have felt like a real sense of pride organising that, knowing that something that you're organising and running is bringing together guys that probably don't see each other, don't catch up with each other all that often, and they're getting enjoyment from something that you've created.
Oh, mate, I was immensely proud of that golf day and being involved with it, and I used to love catching up with everyone because that was, again, it was now the only time I could catch up with anyone because I wasn't working with greenkeepers day to day and doing that sort of stuff. So I used to get a kick out of catching up with people, and every now and then if I'd drive past a golf course, I'd stop in and say good day to the supers, and they were all people that I knew and I'd become, I suppose, friends with.
Yes.
And yeah, I used to absolutely enjoy running that day, and I did so for the following 10 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
9 years after I lost my job, it was.
Possibly longer than you were. Well, definitely longer you were a superintendent, but longer than you were a greenkeeper, or not quite?
No, it was. Well, no. I was a super at Katoomba for 9 and a bit years, and I was, I ran that day for 9 years after I lost my job. So, so it was for a long time afterwards, but I was involved with the years before then as well, and helping people out so I loved it. It was a great way to stay connected, and it continued to be, as far as I could gather, a great way for everyone else to stay connected as well. So we all used to really have a good time at that day. It was a really good way to stay involved, and a bit of a way for, I suppose, blokes to let their hair down a little bit and dump a bit of the load off their shoulders and talk smack and do all that sort of stuff that you do when you're in that group of other peers. We all deal, and unless you're a greenkeeper talking to another greenkeeper or a super talking to another super about those things that only supers deal with, it's hard to do that with other people that aren't in that role.
No, I totally understand that.
You do it with your friends, but we've got, everyone has different circles of friends that they lean on for different things, I think. So, I love that day.
That's awesome, mate. And so post Katoomba, you're running your own business. You've met your girlfriend at the time, who's ended up being your wife and mother of your kids.
Bree, yep,
Bree. And so from there, what have you been up to, and leading into, I guess, starting the reason that we're chatting today, the Golfing Greenkeeper Podcast?
Yeah, I suppose I was doing landscape maintenance and lawn care for people's private properties, and that's what I'd done with my business. I built that up enough that I could put someone else on to help me out and that sort of thing. And then COVID hits. This is a very fast journey through that. But during that time, I got involved with social media because Bree is now, that's what she does for a living. She does social media as her business. And, I was trying to get the message out at Katoomba before we closed, not to the corporate world and to the people who are the connections of the developers that could bring in their money and that sort of stuff, but to the everyday average people, because we were getting people walking into the club that hadn't been there for 15 years and said, "Oh, you're still open? Oh, we thought you'd closed down."
Yep.
And this was long before we actually did, right? So it's ironic that happened, but they were like, "I can't believe the transformation of this place. This is amazing."
For sure. And you're probably thinking, well, people need to know about this.
Yeah, and so social media comes along, right? And then there was an opportunity to share photos. So I started, not a lot, but I was putting up the odd photo in the morning of the gardens, the sunrise, the greens being cut, whatever. And I'm thinking, why aren't we doing more of this as a club? It was only me doing it. And we're out on the golf course. So we're seeing the golf course in those early morning lights. And there was no marketing teams in golf clubs back then. This is 2010, 2012. Those roles didn't exist, really.
Yep.
And
social media was just in its infancy, really.
That's right.
Wasn't it?
So marketing was not really a big thing. There was managers of corporate days and that sort of stuff in clubs. So I was like, this is a cool way to get out some of the great spots and photos of the golf course. And So I started doing that while I was running my own business when I would go and drop into golf courses, and I'd introduce myself to a super and see a course that I'd never seen before in Sydney as I was driving past them, because I brought the business down to the northern beaches where we ended up moving to. And so I moved to Sydney, by the way, out of all that. But then so I started posting the photos of the golf course, and then I thought, well, why? I was doing that as I was catching up with courses, not being in golf anymore, and I was posting things, and I thought, I didn't hear about this golf course, and I reckon I know a fair few golf courses, and I had no idea how good this golf course X was, or whatever it might be. And if I posted a nice photo, someone would go, I've never seen that before. I didn't know that course was there. And I'm like, go and play it. It's really cool.
Yep.
So, it's a means to really showcase some of the good parts about golf courses, and golfers love to see what they're like before they get there, because they sometimes get disappointed if they're not sure and they don't really want to go out on a limb. So I thought, well, I was trying to attract people to Katoomba in the same way. So yeah, I just think it's a good way. So it was a good way to promote a golf course, and we wanted to, I suppose I wanted to continue to do that more. So I was doing a lot of that on social media, just on my own channels. And then we were away or something, and I said to Brea, I want to put a name out there, the Golfing Greenkeeper, because that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm a greenkeeper, and I'm playing golf, and I'm traveling around, and I still see myself as a greenkeeper, not a landscape gardener, at heart.
Yep. Yeah, of course.
So just catchy name in my head. Don't know if it actually is or not, but
no, it is.
So that's how that was born, and I started the Instagram page with it like that, because Brie was like, "Oh, Instagram's really cool" at the time, and I thought, "What's Instagram?" And I like that because it's pictures, and so that's how that came about, and then the podcast was like a Ross Flanagan. Roscoe was. I listened to his podcast and he used to have one called the My Love of Golf podcast. Okay. And Roscoe used to be in Melbourne. He's now moved to Scotland. And we were talking about podcasts, and somehow, I don't remember how, but the Roscoe's My Love of Golf podcast came up, and we played it on the way to Melbourne one time. We were driving down, and I was like, "What? This is really interesting, this podcast thing." And then I think Ross had got in. I think it was him who got in touch with me and asked me to be interviewed on his podcast. And I was like, okay,
because of the stuff you've been doing on Instagram.
Look, I don't even really remember why. Maybe that's why. Maybe we connected through Instagram. That might have been how it started. And then, so he interviewed me on that, and that was either pre-COVID or it might have been around COVID. And I really enjoyed that. That was really interesting to be talking about golf and greenkeeping and golf courses and what makes them good. And I really enjoyed that. And then I think, Brie and I were bouncing around the idea of starting a podcast, and that was in COVID. That was properly in COVID. So Roscoe's must have been before COVID. So then this was in COVID with nothing else to do. So I was like, well...
So you guys were in lockdown at that stage?
Yeah. This was 2020, and the idea was being floated around because it's been 4 years, I think, since this started. So
yeah, which is wild.
I know, right? So we were about to have our firstborn, Savannah, and she was born in August of COVID. That was another thing altogether, trying to have a newborn in COVID. But the podcast was started around that time because I was only able to do limited work, and... I thought, well, okay, let's give this thing a crack. So it was a way to talk about golf courses around Australia, because you could still play golf in New South Wales.
Right.
And I thought, well, I can suggest to people what's worth considering. If they don't know where to go, maybe I can sort of share some of my experience about where to go, and I can give them a bit of an insight into what makes behind the scenes, if you like, about what makes a golf course that we enjoy.
Yep.
And that's kind of really where it started, and it evolved from there pretty quickly. But that was the essence. It was a way, and it was I don't want to use confrontational language, but it was a bit of a fight back and a bit of an answering to people's, I say, ill-informed commentary about some golf courses. When people assume things and they don't actually know why something's done a certain way, and they might say that a golf course is rubbish when it's not actually rubbish. They might not like it, and that's okay. But when they say that it's no good, and I sometimes I struggle with hearing that. You can have your own taste, and that's fine. But if it's not actually rubbish and you just don't like it, I think that's a bit harsh. And if that's out there, that can turn people off. And I didn't like that. I really struggle with that because I come from golf courses, we're growing up and working, that when people said that, if they posted something up about that would hurt. That would hurt the club. And someone would say, oh, well, I'd heard, and how many times you hear that? Oh, I'd heard that course wasn't worth playing. And I'm like, that's not cool, really. So I just wanted to try and inform people better. So I started off by doing that with my own experiences, and then it evolved to, well, what better way to do it than to talk to the people who are actually at that golf course?
So what was the first podcast episode you did? Was it a Walking the Fairways style? Because I picked it up at episode 1 of the Keeper of the Greens.
Yeah, okay, righto. So back in episode number 1 was just really an introduction to me. It was a little bit about not quite as in depth as this, I don't think, because I struggle to talk about myself unless someone genuinely asks, and even then I'm not really sure I'll talk much. But it was just a little bit of a breakdown as to my background into greenkeeping, that I was a superintendent and where I'd grown up working and the work that I'd done, and so it was a little breakdown about me, and then I think it quickly moved to sort of suggesting to where people go and play golf in COVID times. So if they're going to travel, if they went to the south coast of New South Wales or the central west of New South Wales, what golf courses are worth playing, what ones they might come across, and I would describe them because I'd played them. So what they might find. And then I also did as a little bit of an insight into how to try and that was kind of where the Greenkeeper's Shed segment comes from, because it was like to try and understand what to feel for as a golfer. So what grain was on a green, what the different bunker sands were like. So trying to educate golfers to say, okay, I've been in that bunker and I can feel that it's really firm underfoot. What's that going to equal for a bunker shot? What type of bunker shot do I need to play so that I don't blade it, like a driver out of the bunker and fall fairways over? Or the opposite, when it's really soft. So I wanted to try and give them that insight, and I feel that when you work on a golf course, you can give that detailed insight because that's what you do every day.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's kind of how it all started. It was based about trying to inform people, and then it came to entertaining and trying to educate people and have a bit of fun along the way.
And it's just evolved naturally. You've got many different segments. You've had a plethora of guests now, and they're all different. They've all got their own story, and and I got a passion for architecture. I'm trying to introduce architecture into the podcast a lot more. I've got a bit of an association with the Society of Australian Golf Course Architects and a couple of architects like Harley Cruz and the like as well. Ted Sterling, as I mentioned. So, and I've got a lot more guests that I want to bring on as well. Because I like that. So, it's evolved a great deal, and the different segments. Walking the Fairways is news, who's doing what, how golf courses are improving to make themselves better, because lots of courses are doing it, even if it's just resurfacing a tee at a 9-hole golf course, that's their way in their capacity to try and improve. And No, go on.
No, I was going to say, we all know as greenkeepers and people within our club what our club's trying to do. But if someone's looking to go somewhere to play, they might not know, or they might not have played there for 10 years. And they go, I didn't know you'd built that new bunker, or you resurfaced that tee, or you rebuilt that green. I might be worth going back now and seeing what it's like. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a credit to you, mate, because I think it's really unique particularly for the Australian market, I suppose, of golf podcasts. There are quite a few golf podcasts, but I don't know of any others that are anything like yours. So it must be pretty cool to see how it's evolved and see what you bring to the Australian golf market.
Oh, mate, look, I never, ever thought that it would be supported the way it is by by people like yourself, individuals, by people, the broader audience that I don't even know who they are, that listen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you take time out of your day, out of your life, to listen to a podcast, I don't care if it means you're driving the car and you're half zoning out. If you're taking time to listen to me talk about golf, or to listen to the people that I'm interviewing talk about their experience or whatever it is, I'm immensely grateful that you're doing that, because that means you're going out of your way to listen to what we're talking about and what we're giving you. And I never really expected it to be supported and accepted the way it has been. I never expected people to latch on to some of the stories of the guests that I've had on and say, mate, I really, I understand that story, or I resonate a little bit with their upbringing or their career path, and I really enjoyed listening to, equally a Richard Forsyth or a Paul McLean or a Logan Booby out at Parks Golf Club. I mean, it's Pete Causey at Eastwood. It's the small courses as well as the big courses. Yourself at Cranbourne. I mean, its evolution and the way it's been accepted by people is the most humbling thing I may have ever been involved with, to be fair.
That's so cool, Steve. Like, hearing that, you can just, again, you can hear the passion that you have for it, and you can hear the appreciation that you have for the people that listen. And I'm sure, I know from me, it's reciprocal. I love the hour every couple of weeks when you're being regular that I take out of my day to listen to the podcast, and I absolutely love it. So, yeah.
Oh, mate,
cool.
I thank you so much, and anyone else who's, like I said, anyone who listens, those that have messaged, those that comment and reply, and those that give me a call and say, hey, mate, love that episode. It means a great deal, and it's why I can keep doing it. And the support of, the sponsors that I've had a couple of sponsors previously, and now this one that I've got at the moment is John Deere Golf, and I'm incredibly grateful that they see, that this is worth supporting and helping me do more, and I'm able to I suppose, continue to bring out more content because of that support from them, financially as well. And it's everyone involved. Without the people listening, without the people like yourself, without the people supporting me, and a lot of that, a great deal of that goes to my wife Bree as well, because she, looks after the kids, or she's doing the work and things when I'm doing this as well. So it's those unseen people behind the scenes as well. But everyone that's has any connection to the podcast, I'm grateful for, because it wouldn't be anything that it is today, and that means an incredible amount to me. That in a way that I hope that I'm giving something back to the golf community, to the golf industry, to the greenkeeping community and the greenkeeping industry, because I got so much from those groups and from those industries growing up. I got so much from them through my career. I get so much out of them when I talk to people and catch up with people. So everything means a great deal to me in that regard, and hopefully I can some of this is giving back in a way as well. That's all.
Mate, I can say unequivocally you are giving back to the industry, and I think people do get, even if it's just a small little thing out of each episode, you are giving people something, and that's a credit to you, mate. Hey, so before we wrap this up, I've just got a couple of other things I want to ask you about. So last year or earlier this year, I can't actually remember off the top of my head what it was, but you were involved once again at a golf course as a greenkeeper. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, so that was Blackheath Golf Club, a neighbour to where I worked in the mountains. It's in the Blue Mountains, west of Sydney. Yeah, look, Blackheath were going through a difficult time. They'd had a few serious headaches with their irrigation infrastructure. That was resulting in some challenges on course, results of what happens when you have a lack of water and you're not getting a lot of rain, and things are starting to dry out. It's moving into spring when things should be growing. They're going the other way. So, I ended up doing some work with Blackheath Golf Club to get them through a difficult time, to help them work through some of those challenges. And, mate, getting back on the tools was just so much fun. I had the most amount of fun I've had in a long time in a work sense.
Yep.
Because it meant getting back into that problem-solving mindset. Without a budget. So you couldn't just say, the club had pretty tight things going on up there at Blackheath, and you couldn't just say, well, okay, that machine's been playing up for a while, you've just got to go and buy a new one. That's the problem solved. It meant working out how to try and remedy some things so that they could get more life out of some things, to move through some challenging periods, fix things so that they were fixed properly, set them on a path to moving forward to where they could get ultimately they advertised for a superintendent to where they could get the right person that they wanted to employ to take the reins on permanently. I was there to solve some problems. And
so you're changing nutrition programs, you're doing fungicide programs, all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, there was some of that. Most of it was, just trying to get some of the serious headaches, some of the infrastructure issues sorted and working around them until we could get them sorted so that we weren't losing surfaces. That was really the crux of a lot of the issues. And then we moved over to, dealing with some disease pressures and that sort of stuff. But it was a lot of the things that they had going on was just some, they had a council project that was cut through the golf course with some drainage for them, for their dam and stormwater supply, and it cut through a lot of their irrigation, and they were having some dramas with it. So they've moved on well past that now, but we were trying to improve the surfaces along the way, and I love toying with the grass. Trying things and playing with things and see what the results are. And we kicked some really big goals and got the surfaces so much better through mechanical means of improving some of their surface drainage, some of their infiltration issues that they had. And it was just using what they had to problem solve and to deal with and make better some of their turf surfaces. It was a lot of fun and we kicked some really good goals in a short time.
Well, mate, going off the photos that you were posting on Instagram, I saw the before and afters and the progress photos. I can tell you were having fun because you were posting every day, much like I do myself. But you clearly did a really good job there.
Mate, I look, I hope I did. The measure was from the club, obviously, and we turned a corner on things, and we, like I said, I just had to get them to a point where they could get someone who was able to take the role on full time. And now they've got a great young superintendent there in Andrew, and he's picked up the reins and run with it. But I didn't realise that I missed it that much. I think it's probably the right way of saying it. And when I got back into it, I was having a whale of a time. I think Bree had enough of me talking about it.
And mate, if that is the last time that you do work in a golf course, at least you finished on a high note rather than, not to say that Katoomba wasn't a high note, but, what could have been there and the way your career was going there before it all came to an end. You've sort of come full circle. Once again, you've picked up a golf course that's struggling a little bit. And it sounds like a really good way, if it is the last time you work in a golf course, to cap that off.
Mate, you probably bang on. I hadn't really thought about it, but that's a much better way to finish off than coming into work and being told you don't have a job anymore. And you're right. I never close the door, and I never say never. But who knows? If it is the last time, I'll be very pleased that was a way to do it, because it was really enjoyable, and I hope that I was able to. I know that I was able to educate some of the people up there in the club about what to expect and how to work towards better goals, and inform them about how they could go about things, and you do have to be very conscious about who you listen to in our industry, and certainly in clubs.
For sure.
They have to be conscious, because everyone's prepared to give an opinion, and a lot of people think they are experts at a lot of things, and they don't always ring true. So I think that's a polite way of saying it. You go, just a discerning mind, I think, as to who you're listening to. And I really appreciated Blackheath, I suppose, investing in me to be able to get them through some of those challenges. So, and then hand the baton over to the next person. And Andrew Hamill, the super there now, like I said, is a young fella, and I think he's doing a great job at it. So, which is good.
It's awesome. So, Steve, before we wrap this up, do you have any? Maybe you'll say all of them. You'll be diplomatic, but do you have any standout guests or standout episodes that, off the top of your head, that you can think of that are your favourite? You can reel off a few if that helps.
Yeah, there's never a one. Like I say, I don't often do ones about anything.
Yeah.
I've had, first up, being diplomatic and say all of them, because I think everyone's got a wonderful story. But my interest in the things that I really, enjoy are people whose stories have taken them to places that, like my travel as a kid, places around the country, and a lot of those are regional areas as well. So I really enjoyed chatting with Tim Warren from Glenelg. I even more recently, Jimmy Downs from Humpty Doo.
That was a good one.
Jason Johnson from Broome Golf Club, he is just one of the coolest characters going around. He's no longer at Broome, sadly, but he was a character as well, and some of the stories that I just couldn't put on air. I had to, and Jason knows this, I had to take some things off that just aren't possible to be put into the public. And they're the sorts of, and it's not that they're just funny stories, but they probably wouldn't be viewed in the right light, I think is the right way of saying it.
That's fair enough.
But that's by the by. I mean, so many. I like talking to young. Young upcoming superintendents as well, like yourself, mate. Hearing that passion. I think talking to a Richard Forsyth and a Tim Warren, they're the elder statesmen of our industry, and they've seen so much. But hearing that young enthusiasm, not to say that they don't still have it, because I think they're very passionate about what they do and they still have a great drive. But hearing it from someone who reminds me of myself, Tim's jumps into mind. Jimmy Downs jumps into mind. There's plenty that I can't even think of. You got me thinking whether I should go back through my list here.
Well, mate, it's fair enough. You've done 100 now,
the podcast. So 100 episodes. Who would have thought that? I never would have thought I'd even rack up triple figures. 100 episodes. That's that's another level altogether. I mean, Ryan Stores is another one that springs to mind recently from Royal Canberra. So many people. And look, there's going to be ones that I can't even think of off the top of my head as well that I'll probably offend somebody along the way by not mentioning.
No, I don't think so, mate. I don't think you'll offend anybody.
I mentioned to it, but yeah, look, I reckon that they're probably the couple that stand out, and maybe that's because they're some of the most recent. I mean, John Mann, Metro. I really got right into what he was talking about, a little bit like Richard Forsyth. Into the technical side of how they do their jobs. That was a real crack as well. I really enjoyed those ones too. So, do I have one? Probably not really, but I've certainly got some that I enjoy more than others, I guess, and it's through that travel side of stuff too.
No, fantastic, Steve. Before we finish, I've said this a few times, but reflecting on 100 episodes, is there anyone you'd like to thank? Anything else you'd like to mention? And then I'm going to wrap things up with one final question.
Okay. Well, look, I get an incredible amount of support at home from Bree, my wife. She's been through the ups and downs, and we've had certainly a few challenges of late at home with our young fellow, as a lot of people know and I've talked about. But that's been a tough time for us as a family, and I get funny talking about it.
I can't make you cry on your own podcast, Steve.
Far out. I didn't expect that to happen. Yeah.
Mate, I think in any career or anything that we put ourselves into in life, like our wives, partners, family, they really are not underappreciated, but we couldn't do what we do without supportive family and partners, and so
none of us could. And
I totally understand you getting a bit emotional over that.
Yeah,
mate.
It's just been a tough time with the young fella, and that's made it a little bit harder to keep going sometimes, but that's where a lot of my thanks go. And like I said before, the industry, the golf industry and the greenkeeping industry more broadly, well, I was at the conference in Brisbane and I had a couple of people, tap me on the shoulder and say, "Okay, Steve, I listened to the podcast, mate. I just wanted to say well done, and I enjoy it." And I'm like,
"Yep,
holy struth! Like, really? How cool
is that?
That's just staggers me. It really does to this day, and that's the level of support that, like I said, it's some of it's that I know of from people like yourself, and there's so many people that I couldn't rack off. It'd be another half an hour of me just naming people, right? That have supported me along the way individually, and everyone knows who they are that I talk regularly with and message to and that sort of stuff. But look, a big thanks, like I said, at home to Bree for that. She helps me through a lot of this stuff and supports the family and supports me in doing it, and everyone out there who listens and has been part of it and is part of it and continues to be part of it, and that's the corporate side of it with John Deere Golf, the personal side with everyone who says yes to being on the podcast and helping me out, even some of the people that just send me information on social media and say, "Hey, Steve, here's an update of what we're doing on our course." So, there's a lot of people to say thank you to. There's lots, and I appreciate it all from everyone.
Mate, that's awesome. And again, from me, I'll just say thank you to you for doing this podcast. It's been probably my favourite podcasts over at least the last 3 or 4 years, and I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, mate.
So, it's been great for me, hearing other greenkeepers' stories and hearing about other golf courses. It's just a refreshing little break from my day, and sometimes you'll be having a bad week or a bad day, and you hear someone else's story and hear maybe the challenges they're going through and then the triumphs that they're having in their work, and it can kind of turn it around. So that's probably why I listen, and that's a credit to you, mate.
Thank you, mate. I'm just humbled and glad that you get a kick out of it. That means a great deal, and if there's more of people that think similarly to you, mate, then I'm over the moon. Just one person makes me over the moon. So no, mate, I'm very thankful, and I appreciate you saying that. It's terribly kind. No,
of course, mate. So people are probably sick of hearing my voice on this podcast because this is the third time that I've been on it.
Yes,
sorry, Tim,
that's
I've been on 3 times. I just want to say that there is Rowan Damon. Rowan Damon, if you are listening, I've got you now. 3 times.
3 times, that's it. Yep, Rowan's been on twice. Yeah. Yep.
And Steve, question 9. If you could play golf with anyone in the world tomorrow, who would it be?
I totally forgot about that one. Who would it be? You know what? Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with a golfer, and it's probably going to be controversial.
Okay.
And that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions.
Yep.
I think in the way that the golf world has gone of late, I'd love to play golf with and ask some questions to Greg Norman.
Wow.
I think
that's a bit left field.
Look, I know plenty of people that have played with Greg in pro-ams and that sort of stuff and whatever, but if I could play a round of golf with Greg Norman, I think it would be a really interesting, because when I grew up, Greg Norman was it. That's the 90s. That's Greg Norman was the number one. He was number one for however many hundreds of weeks. I don't remember, right? And he's been viewed in so many different ways over the years, because he's a business person and he took control of his career, and he took control of himself as a business and his brand, and he created things and did things like Michael Jordan did for basketball, he did for golf. And he was the first one really to probably do it in that way for golf, I think. So, he's an Aussie. at heart, I guess, but he lived in the States for a long time, and it feels like he abandoned Australia for a period. It feels like that. I don't know that he actually did, and I've had mixed opinions about Greg in the past too. And with what's happened with Liv and what's happened in the professional side of the golf world and his design side of things, that he's had some of our fantastic architects like Bob Harrison work, for him and that sort of stuff, and Harley Cruz's work for him. And I think if I was able to play around at golf and see what he's like at his ripe old age now, I say it, he would still be a gun from what I gather. But a controversial person, but I think there'd be lots to ask. Hell of a career, seeing the world change so much. He's been a big part of that. Yep. Yeah, maybe I'll go with that. Doubt. Maybe I'll go with that. Good answer. I wonder what people think about that one.
We may find out in the comments section.
I probably will. Or the text messages, whichever way people decide to go with that one.
Yep. Steve, it's been a pleasure hosting this podcast. I'll hand the reins back to you now and retire the microphone and get back to work. Steve Smith, episode 100, the Golfing Greenkeeper Podcast.
Nico, thank you so much, mate. It's been wonderful to be involved with my own podcast. I really appreciate it, mate. You've been a fantastic host, and I'm really glad and I'm really appreciative, mate, that you were the one hosting it because, mate, you've done so well on the end of the microphone, and I couldn't have asked for anyone better to be involved, mate. So thank you. And thank you to everyone out there listening. And, mate, it's been a real blast. I've had a laugh, and I probably need to have another drink. And, a wave of emotions, mate, reminiscing about all sorts of things in my career. So I hope everyone's enjoyed that, mate. And thank you so much for being the host on number 100. And, mate, do I leave you with the final line?
No, you can do it. Go on.
All right, mate. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave you with it. You hit 'em clean, we'll keep 'em green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.
Hello, mate.
Hey, mate. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Not too bad for a humid, hot, steamy afternoon, mate. It's wild up here.
It is. I saw it was very hot. Was it yesterday?
Yesterday it was like 36 at our front door.
Yeah, that's too hot.
That's why. And you know what? Like, I know you guys get it too, but in Sydney, and the part that gets me is it's a very steamy, humid heat, and in the mountains, like as soon as you get to the mountains, because you're up so high, you get the westerly wind and you're away from the humidity because you're a kilometre up, right? And I grew up without the humidity, so my body just struggles. And down here in Sydney, it's like living in a blanket. Yep. Yeah, so are you comfy? Are you ready to go?
I think so. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, and that's it, man. I've never done this, obviously, so I'm curious to see what it's like having two people have fun, knowing that we've both experienced enough that you've been on it, so you know. Everyone I interview, it's the first time, so they're not really sure what having fun means.
Yep.
If that makes sense. No. So
for sure. Yep.
I
think this will be good.
I'm looking forward to this. All right, mate.
All right, mate. Thank you heaps for that. That was fun.
No, thank you, mate. Not thank me. Thank you. That was really, it's a lot of effort for you to do that and think about it.
No, mate, it's your baby.
That was awesome.
It must be hard to let go a little bit of control, and you don't know how it's going to go, but I really appreciate letting me do it, and I'm, a bit humbled, really.
Mate, that was a lot of fun. And look, I laugh, and it's always in jest about letting go and all that sort of stuff, but that was a bit of fun. Were you surprised by some of my answers?